to Road Gang Radio with Jimmy Mack, Lindsay Lawler.
Give me a minute, y'all. I'm coming.
And you, because if you're listening, you're in the gang. Take it away, founding member Phone Master Dre.
Jimmy's got it.
I do, in fact, got it. NAPFTDS. NAPFTDS, the National Association of Publicly Funded Truck Driving Schools, is one of our partners on Education Station, along with the CVTA, the Commercial Vehicle Training Association. We are thrilled to have both of them as partners because it means that we have quality people who are certified and hold themselves to a higher standard than sometimes we often are faced with out there on the highways and byways. And those folks are actually setting standards that allow us to have ongoing conversation like the one we have here on Radio Nemo, on Road Gang Radio, your weekly edition of Education Station. It's brought to you, of course, by Carrier's Edge and our friend Jane Jazrawi, who is a regular contributor on this segment as well. Want to thank Martin Garci, by the way, who is responsible for just like Andy Polikoff with our friends over at CVTA. Martin Garci has bent over backwards as another founding member of the reconstituted Road Gang. Martin has made a real effort to make sure we have quality guests who can speak to what is going on in the training sector in a way that, often people kind of glaze over. Get your CDL and move on. That's not what's happening here. That's not part of these conversations. And really important to make sure, especially during this National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, that, in fact, a lot of people understand it's a real skill set. It is not a blue-collar job. It is not a white-collar job. It's a light blue-collar job requiring skills in, both skill sets. And we are pleased to welcome Tony Diaz. He's the program coordinator for the Amarillo College Truck Driving Academy and a board member at the NAPFTDS. Good morning to you, Tony. Welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys having me.
Tony, I want to dig into this because Andy of CVTA came on the show a couple of weeks ago after that terrible U-turn accident to kind of talk about the need to increase the reach of the ELDT, to really increase the need to make sure that the schools that are out there are doing what they're supposed to be doing. You guys, in many ways, over at the National Association of Publicly Funded Truck Driving Schools, which, by the way, is napftds.org, really are taking point. You get a chance to talk to a lot of truck drivers out there, and many of them, as you've expressed, are deeply concerned about the reputation of the industry, correct?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Can you kind of talk about what their concerns are, and what they're worried about, and how truck driving schools can really take the lead in making sure that reputation grows and is enhanced?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of concern anymore. Something that we're trying to incorporate these days, even just more recently with all the activity with some of the communication restraints that we're having out there, and people getting shut down on the road, things of that nature. But we try to incorporate, with a lot of students these days, they're getting homeschooled when they're driving for just to get their Class C license. And I don't think there's a lot of people that don't realize the signs, how the road is communicating to us as drivers and so forth. And I think we're seeing more of those issues. So we're trying to implement, having discussions about those signs, since there's a lack of driver ed these days, or at least in Amarillo, a lot of homeschooling going on there to get there to do. So just educating those people a little bit more, trying to bring in those soft skills and all those different things that's going to help them out there in the industry be successful drivers in the future. That kind of touch on what you was asking there?
That kind of gets there, Tony. And I want to kind of set this up with your own bona fides because, when people end up becoming the program coordinator for the Truck Driving Academy at Amarillo College, I kind of want to give people a sense of how you end up in that position and why organizations like, the NAPFTDS, why they're so crucial, because there's a certain guarantor that you're going to have trainers and you're going to have people who are running these programs who have seen all sides of the industry. I would love if you just would unpack a little bit of your own experience in the industry and give people a sense of who you are.
Okay. Yeah, well, I started out, my first driving job was with Coca-Cola, and kind of progressed with there. It was a wonderful job traveling, and except on snow days and stuff, having to get out there and work those stacks. But I kind of progressed and eventually became an owner-operator. I was raising my son, and Mom was helping watching him quite a bit. So it was just tough out there trying to work the road and make a living for me and my family. I kind of stepped back and got offered a job as a dispatcher and spent many years dispatching with a local company here in Amarillo, Camera Transport, and kind of progressed with that. And then in my 40s, decided I want to go back to school and get into administration, business administration. And then did that for a long time, got into some operation jobs after that, or actually 2 operations jobs after that, and kind of just building those companies up and trying to expand the industry and learn what I could about that. What really pushed me is the reason I went for business administration, working for some smaller companies, nothing on the national level or anything like that, but just struggles with treating your drivers right. I think as a manager, I think if you take care of your employees, they're going to take care of your customers and stuff. And so it kind of led me into education, going that route. And then once I got into education and got my business administration degree, I just knew that just wanted to put myself in a position that I could be there more for my employees and stuff. And then Amarillo College was looking for a program coordinator, so I come on here and I finally got my bachelor's degree when I was 4 years ago, and so everything I learned in school kind of just dovetailed working with this college. I mean, the culture and what education brings, working for a community college or university and stuff kind of went hand in hand in the beliefs and what you're trained to do and stuff like that. So I just fell in love with it and have a great group of people. I probably have 30 people under me at the 3 campuses that work diligently and hundreds of years of experience out there helping these students that are coming into our schools, trying to get into the industry and better their lives. So just kind of a little bit of a passion of mine and working with instructors to reach those younger generations going to be out there on the road helping us all.
Tony, it's such a great kind of thing to kind of put this in perspective, and I don't know how many times you've had a chance to tell that story, but if anybody who was paying attention, and I know a lot of our friends out there were, you go from the road, you go from actually the kind of truck driving job that really does require interpersonal relationships. I mean, if you actually work for Coca-Cola, if you're part of the loading and unloading process, if you got a whole bunch of deliveries, you're talking with a lot of people, you're meeting with a lot of people, you're getting a chance to see all sides of the industry, and then you go from there to the dispatcher role, there to the administrative roles. You also know of what you speak because anybody coming to you and saying, man, you don't know how hard it is to get this degree, you can look at them or this CDL and you can say, oh, no, my friend, I have a very clear idea of what it's like to have to balance son at home, family at home, that you have a unique perspective. And in many ways, what your association does and other associations like yours do is it provides incoming students, incoming future truck drivers of America, an opportunity to work with people who actually know where everybody sits because you've sat there. And I was kind of curious at that core, 30 people working underneath you at a number of campuses. When you go about the process of onboarding, we'll get to new students in a second, but when you're bringing on new people to train, new people to kind of, be a part of the adventure that you've kind of built at Amarillo, can you talk a little bit about what you're looking for in a trainer when you know you've got the guy or got the gal who's going to really serve the people who need training in the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm usually looking for, and I usually have a team of peers whenever we conduct those interviews. So most of the people that's coming in that meet the criteria to become part of our team, so they got the driving experience. And so when I'm bringing them in, I'm usually looking for a couple of things. The willingness to learn something new and the cultural fit, because we're one big family here. And I found that if you have a team that looks up to you and listens to you, and we can talk about, hey, this is the move I'm thinking, what do you think? I have 7 examiners, and we communicate quite a bit on trying to implement, better ways to reach our students and so forth. So if I can find somebody, the last thing I want is, the majority of the instructors or people coming in for those interviews, they're like, yeah, I have 50 years of experience and stuff, and I just want to pass down what I know to these students. And that's absolutely what I need toward the end of the program, is to share that knowledge. That I need a willingness to kind of learn how to break this down to somebody a novice that's never been around a truck and stuff. So we got to take baby steps before we can kind of get to the point to really share a lot of our experience. So if they got the willingness to learn, because there's computers. Most of the truck drivers that I've hired, they have very little computer experience and stuff, and working in a pedagogy world. We're on the computer doing different things quite often and stuff, so there's a little bit of a learning curve there. But if they got the willingness, we can teach them. I mean, we're educators. Cultural fit, though, is probably my top one.
You mentioned earlier, Tony, the idea that, and I have a question. I'm going to ask you in a second just to kind of prep you up for what makes a good local driver and what makes a good dispatcher. You've answered the good administrator question indirectly by saying, you need to care about your employees in such a way that they are willing to care about the people that they work for and the customers that they serve. And that kind of speaks to culture. So when you talk about a cultural fit, is there a personality type? I mean, we all know we want people with experience and a willingness to teach that knowledge. But I've often found that the best instructors are also the best students. They're also people who might not be great at things, but they get very, very good from simply paying attention and really kind of buckling down. But let's kind of hone in on culture first, and then I'll get to the local driver and the dispatcher question. Talk to me about what that word means to you when you say a good cultural fit. And I always use football analogies. There are some really great coaches who shouldn't be coaching in the Midwest because they're obviously Southerners, and there's some Southerners there's some Midwesterners that often struggle in places like Baton Rouge for their first couple of seasons because they come across as the Boston Yankee that they are. That being said, can you talk about what a good cultural fit means to you?
Yeah. So to me, that's somebody that gets along with everybody. And there's a lot of truck drivers that they like to talk, and I enjoy listening and stuff. So I want somebody that doesn't try to control the situation. When I'm talking to them in an interview and stuff, they kind of stick to the facts and everything, but I can kind of get that feel that they're being an active listener. And because when we're talking to the students, one of my first rules when I bring on their instructors, you got to connect before you can correct. So we've got to build that relationship before we ever get out there and try to teach one of our students, especially if it's one of those students that think they already know what to do in their floating gears and or trying to float gears and stuff like that. We have to break it down to another level with their double clutch and their whatever that looks like for them. But when it comes to what that means to me, it's somebody that's willing to adapt, willing to learn what we have to share, and then listen to what we've built on over the years to have a successful class and a program. So to me, it's somebody and it has some energy to them. My best instructors with energy, they're just ongoing. They're out there cutting up with the students and making that connection and stuff, so they can go out there and teach them after they learn, what style this student is. Is he hands-on? Is he a listener? Or is he like to study? So there's a lot to come into that, and they got to have the willingness to learn, because we got to teach them all of that. There's different age groups are going to learn at different levels. You've got to fill that out and be able to adapt to that student and so forth. And so if you're not an active listener and you're not an easygoing person and stuff like that, you're probably going to struggle with some of your classes.
By the way, it's so well said. You made me, I always say when something actually is said correctly, I end up having my own kind of clarity of thought about it. I didn't realize this in regards to an interview for many, many years. And that a friend of mine once said, we actually were looking at a number of people for a position, and everybody except for her and I wanted to hire this guy immediately. And they said, "What is your problem with this guy?" And her answer was spectacular. She said, "My concern is that he has an answer for everything." And I remember that landing with me when she said that. And, you mentioned the idea of not trying to control the situation or the conversation. And there's another way to kind of think about it, too. There are people we meet in this world who seem to change the topic and the conversation almost immediately from the get-go to actually create a world that is designed for their and only their immediate comfort, meaning that they are going to literally try to kind of come into a situation, change topics of conversation, change the food that is being served, all of it, you know what I'm saying, in an attempt to make sure that they are comfortable. I didn't think about that until just now. And that really is a telltale sign, isn't it, that you're really looking for people who are open to the idea that the world is, especially in trucking, a rapidly changing thing with different personalities and different people, and you've got to be enthusiastically open to the possibility that the world ain't just designed for you. Is that kind of what we're getting at here?
That's true. Yeah, you got to be able to adapt with any business or college and stuff like that. You got to stay ahead of the technology. You got to be willing to adapt and move along so you don't get left behind. So.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of the idea that the world ain't going to work out the way you want it to work out, but if you let it work out the way it wants to work out, you may find that there's some things inside of it that are really designed to kind of make your life a better place. Tony Diaz joins us this morning. I wanted to kind of get down to I will get to that local driver and that dispatcher question. I promise you at some point, but I wanted to know if there are any, we always talk about the broader picture. Are there any stories in your time over there at Amarillo that really speak to what the experience can be? Success stories of students who came in who might not have been from a background that said immediate success as a truck driver, where you and your staff were able to kind of take somebody from almost knowing nothing about trucking, but so by the time they left your program, and you can take the time and tell us about what it's like to be in your program, where they left and you felt like that's kind of the gold standard for how we want to move somebody through this program.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like that about most of our students. Obviously we have our enrollment at this college, 70% is non-traditional. The majority of those students are going to be from the 23 to 27 range. And I see that in our program as well. Although we get some traditional students right out of high school that come in here and want to learn the ropes, they have family members, have businesses or whatever that looks like. But, all of those are success stories, especially for these non-traditionals. These are students that have never been to college per se. And although I just have an 8-week program for the full-time students during the day, that opportunity to come to college and get a little bit of college experience, that's one thing during graduation that them and their families are absolutely excited about. But any of these, I would say the majority of these students are looking for a life change. I mean, they're out there making $10, $15 an hour. They can come to any of these programs across the U.S. and enter into a CDL program and get their certification in a short amount of time and then be out there on the road and be able to provide for their families and stuff. So it's life-changing for so many kids and everything. And at my school, you ask any of my instructors, what is it that keeps you here every day? What is it that excites you about that? And it's either, when they get it, that light bulb comes on. They struggle with it for 3 or 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden that light bulb comes on. Or it's that day on graduation when they've got their CDL and they've locked down a position with somebody that comes in and recruits these students and stuff, and they got a new life ahead of them. So then at that point, we're just, it's teaching them about retention. Find a job that you can stick with for a couple of years. Got to get out there and get your experience.
Yeah, and I really love that. Let me go back to the light bulb comment real quick, because I got to tell you, I was I did work in middle schools as a disciplinarian and a teacher, and have worked as a teacher in a number of places. Is there a better feeling in this world than that light bulb? Seeing the light bulb in the student's eyes when you've been working on something and they're struggling and they're a bit confused, and then the moment comes, and I'll use our own analogy, the engine turns over. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. For an educator, I think that's it. I mean, it's success in some form. Whatever that looks like for you. Success of completing the course. Success in learning how to double clutch. Not not grinding gears so much. I don't. Depending on what that looks like for that student and stuff. But no, absolutely, that's one of the best feelings ever to see that in students' eyes.
Yeah, and we don't always
Yeah,
we don't always focus on them figuring out why the negative thing they're doing is wrong. We often, we only kind of place success on doing something right, but often figuring out, hey, you know what? When you double clutch, this is what you're actually doing, and watching the light go off in their head, being like, maybe I shouldn't do this, because if I stop doing that, this might get a whole lot easier. And watching them kind of eliminate the mistakes plays its way through. I've been dying to ask you this, because we don't get a chance to talk to a lot of folks who actually have sat in all the different chairs. There's so many good instructors out there, so many good program coordinators, but you've worked as a good dispatcher, and I've always been kind of curious, if I was going to ask you to say what a great dispatcher does. Because the other thing is, you're able to kind of tell your students, hey, when you get into the real world, you found yourself a winner when she or he is doing the following. And I know you're always kind of instructing your trainers and the students on what to look for to know they're in a good situation. What does that look like?
To me, I recommend to our students, whoever you go look for, that dispatcher is your lifeline. You got to have respect for them. You got to build a relationship with them. And if they ask you something, you just got to say, yes, I'll take care of you. I got your back. As a dispatcher for myself, I had some good people and I had some not so good people, but those, I tried to be nice and courteous to everybody. You got to show every human the respect that they deserve and treat them as you would want to be treated. But there were times that were frustrating, but there were a lot of times that as a dispatcher, I just had a group of people and I was like, hey, can you take care of this? Kind of a little bit in the pinch. And as a dispatcher, whenever those drivers would get us out of the pinch or go above and beyond and stuff like that, everybody likes their time home. So I would arrange it that they get 48 hours home or they need a little bit of time. I was real flexible, just like I would be if they worked in the office with me and stuff and need a little extra time, because home time becomes very important when you're out there for a week or 2 weeks and stuff without being too deserved. So just like if somebody's going to take PTO at the office and stuff when they're off, and try to give them that respect. But just being consistent with that mindset, taking care of your drivers, and your drivers are going to treat you well. They're going to go out on the limb for you and stuff, and those make the best drivers if they can just learn some of those soft skills, how to communicate with your dispatcher, how to communicate with other drivers, be helpful when you can. Try not to have your blinds on when you're out there on the road. Let's pay attention to the drivers on the road and stuff like that. Get on the CV, see where you can help. Just trying to incorporate that, which we don't see very often.
Yeah, and I've always said, the best dispatchers for me, and you just said this another way, is a great dispatcher knows that the people they are talking to and communicating with are human beings and not just prospective loads. And that is makes such a difference, the idea that you actually are talking to human beings. Dave talks about this all the time on the show. We've got to get it to the point where people, four wheels on the road, look at an 18-wheeler and go, that's a human being driving that truck and not just a truck. Not just a load. That's so important. Tony, we've only got about a minute and a half left here. Really quickly, how long is your program? How long is the Truck Driving Academy? How long does it take to get somebody that CDL?
We have since we are part of academic, we do have a 16-hour college course, so that's 332 hours, 8-week course. And then I have a 14-week night course that's part-time. Generally, we're in week 5 or halfway through those programs. We're starting to give people their CDLs. We have over 99% pass rate here at Amarillo College, and a lot of that is still not everybody can do that in 8 weeks and stuff, but I tried to, just as long as their attendance is good and those guys are showing up and try to learn, I go an extra. I give the students, if your attendance been good and everything, you get an extra 2 weeks out of my pocket. I'm going to work with you. And most of the students are gone during that time, and so you might just have a couple, 2 or 3, a handful. And so they get that one-on-one experience with my instructors and until we can get them across the finish line. So leaving that open for those guys, and then not everybody belongs on the road. I do have some people that, a very short amount of people that probably need more training than that. But as a last resort, if pulling the combination is not the deal, we can always I got one automatic truck that I use. And if that trailer is still an inconvenience and they're trying to back and do the reverse offset or whatever, we can take that trailer off. I'll get you something. You can always come back to another program and I'll work with you a little bit more with a little bit more experience under your belt and get you at some point.
Tony Diaz, by the way, has joined us this morning at Education Station. Soft-spoken, but with a great deal of force behind his words and a great deal of wisdom. Program coordinator for the Amarillo College Truck Driving Academy. He's also a National Association of Publicly Funded Truck Driving Schools board member. Can't thank Martin enough for getting us the connection with you. You're welcome back anytime, Tony. You got any big plans for the weekend? Anything fun you do with your life?
Tomorrow's my birthday, so spend a little time with my week and try to, with my wife, and try to get out to the lake 1 or 2 more times before it gets too cold for that. My wife's not ready for summer to be over, so we're just going to do a little spending time with the family and playing a little bit over the next few days.
By the way, happiest of birthdays from both Phone Master Dre and myself. Say it, Dre. Go ahead.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday to you, Tony. We love having you here. Go ahead. Day to you. That's Lindsay, by the way, saying happy birthday to you as well, Tony.
Beautiful voice.
So you got a good voice. We went through the 2 voices, and then we got to the actual voice. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah, there it is.
Tony, you couldn't ask for anything
Thank you,
more.
guys.
You're welcome, my brother. Go have a great day. All right, man.